Because if we can solve offices problems, they're going to stay with us,
Yeah.
right? And our goal, like my dad was in practice for 30 plus years, my grandfather was in practice for 35 plus years. We would rather keep you for the life of your practice, right? We're not trying to come and grab your business for 3 years, you know, feed creep you, as it's politely called, and then you leave and go to the next processor. That's not what we want to do, right? So we want to build great technology. We want to do it at a fair price, and we want you to stay with us for the life of being in practice.
Genesis Nation, welcome back. And super excited to have with us Jonathan McAleese with Fortis Pay. If you've been in the profession for the last 10, 15 years, you probably have heard of Fortis. I use them myself for merchant services, i.e. credit card processing, and integrated directly with Genesis, even iframed within Genesis. So it made it really simple to work with payment plans, storing credit cards, all that kind of stuff. I think the features, the benefits, they're enough. Like they're there. Everything is there. We'll touch on that quickly. I'm more curious about your story because Fortis Pay is so entrenched in chiropractic. So can you share your chiropractic story with us, Jonathan?
Yeah, of course. So, hey everyone, glad to be here. First off, we love working with Genesis. They were actually our first partner in the chiropractic space. So
Awesome.
we've been working with Genesis since I think it was either 2012 or 2013. I'd have to go back and look.
Wow.
So it's been a while now. But how we got involved in chiropractic actually dates back to the 60s. So in 1969, my dad was an immigrant to this country. He enlisted in the Marine Corps. Um, he ends up going into boot camp. My dad was not a big guy. He was 5'6". When he enlisted in the Marine Corps, he was like 110 pounds. They bulked him up to 165, and he was
Wow.
doing hand-to-hand combat. And I don't know if you guys remember the American Gladiators, and they
Yeah.
would fight pugil stick and
Oh,
had the cushion on the end, and they knock each other off. Well, they used those, but my dad said at the end was a wooden block instead of a cushion. And he gets hit in the side of the head, flips upside down, lands on his head, passes out cold. They send him to the infirmary, wake him up, send him back out. Over the next few weeks, he starts to have swelling in his knees, and he was running in combat boots and playing handball. And so they were trying to figure out what's wrong with him. They eventually send him in for surgery. This is when they would, keep you awake for a surgery like that. They just numb you from the waist down.
yeah.
Keep you awake. Surgeon opens him up, says there's nothing structurally wrong with his knee. So they suture him back up, send him back out. My dad slowly starts deteriorating. He goes from 185 pounds or 165 pounds, excuse me, down to 86 pounds,
Oh,
full quadriplegic, no use of his hands or legs, in a wheelchair.
wow.
Um, Marine Corps starts sending him all over the country to try and figure out what's wrong with him. They basically tell him, you're never going to walk again. So they are sending him to every hospital that they can, and every offer is drug and surgery, drug and surgery. And so my dad remembers kind of lying in the hospital bed, looking up at the ceiling, going, if I don't get out of here, they're going to kill me.
Yeah.
So my dad goes home and just thinks he's going to live like this forever. My dad actually has a crazy story. I was just with him the other week and heard like new details. Every time I talk to him, I get new crazy details of the story. But so they send him home. He's destined to be in a wheelchair. And it takes about a year for his mother, my grandmother, to convince him to come see this chiropractor. My grandmother was seeing a chiropractor at the time. She had Addison's disease, and she noticed when she would get adjusted, she could take half her medication and it worked just as well.
Wow.
So she tries to get him to come in this chiropractor for a while. Eventually he relents after like, what can it hurt?
Yeah.
Right. Well, the chiropractor she was seeing at the time was Dr. Ian Grasham. So my dad goes in, sees Dr. Ian. Dr. Ian takes an x-ray. My dad's atlas is completely shoved into his spinal cord. So he's just fully subluxated, but there was
Yeah.
no structural damage. And so Dr. Ian says, I can fix you. So my dad starts coming in, getting adjusted by Dr. Ian, slowly is then able to ride a bicycle, walk with a cane. And then eventually Dr. Ian gets my dad better. My dad says, how can I ever repay you? Dr. Ian, being the chiropractor that he is, says, go to chiropractic college, My dad goes to St. Louis, goes to chiropractic college, starts following around. So Dr. Ian became one of his mentors. And then two of Dr. Ian's best friends were Dr. Jimmy Gregg and Dr. John Hoffman. So they kind of back in the day called them the Three Amigos.
Yeah.
And so those were my dad's mentors. And so back then in the 70s, there weren't all these shows or groups or coaching groups like there are today. So if you were a principled chiro, you were doing structural correction, it was DE. So my dad went to DE seminar. Dr. Jimmy Gregg ends up introducing him to this woman who was working in her dad's office as a CA. They later get married. That becomes my mother. So yeah, so chiropractors all in my family. So my dad's a chiropractor. His brother's a chiropractor. My mom's sister is a chiropractor. Her husband's a chiropractor. My mom's dad is a chiropractor.
Wow.
His brother is a chiropractor. So my grandfather's brother, and that's Dr. Mike Nathanson, and he was actually a founding member of Life University. So my brother is also a chiropractor as well. We married into chiropractic families, so that's just kind of the immediate family is chiropractor. So I grew up going to FCA, DE seminars, things like that. My dad delivered us at home. When I was delivered, I was adjusted immediately. So I literally from birth have been adjusted.
Yeah.
So grew up in chiropractic, obviously know all about it. Grew up in my dad's office. My brother becomes a chiropractor. He's running a large clinic. He asked us to help him because back then we were just a payment processing company. We had no technology. All the technologies, so you had processing companies and what they call gateways or technology companies, and they were separate. And so back in the day, you had two options. You were either using standalone gateways, so you can think of like a Moneris or an authorized.net, like systems like that, where as a processor we could plug into, or you were using a terminal.
Okay.
And so if you're using a terminal, you were key entering your transactions into a terminal when you needed to run your recurrings on the 1st and 15th.
Yeah.
If you were using an authorized.net, it was a standalone system. It wasn't integrated to your EHR like Genesis. And so you might have been running recurring payments, but it was pain in the butt because maybe you're running on the 1st and 15th and the patient walks in and says, hey, I need to move my payment date this month from the 1st to the 12th. Can you do that? Well, to do that process was 27 steps.
And 35 minutes later.
Exactly. Yep. And so after talking actually with Arez at a trade show, we were like, well, if we built something, would you guys integrate it? And Arez was like, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we start building a gateway. About 8-10 months later, we integrated in. And that's kind of where things got started. So now today, many years later, we have a ton of features that we do. And the whole system was built around efficiencies, right? So we wanted to make an office more efficient. Back then, we processed about 2 billion a year in credit card volume. Today, we process 22 billion a year.
Wow, that's amazing. So before you go forward, I want to get this understanding. So now you have the terminals, which they could just be a regular swipe card, but they link into you said the gateway is what it's on. So you now have, I guess that's something that's new because there's things that have expanded or expanded beyond authorized.net and these larger companies. So now you have your own gateway that's Fortis Pay's gateway. Is that accurate?
Exactly. Yep. So we do everything in-house now. So we own all the tech. We've built it from the ground up. It's all our code. We are a processor now. Back then we were kind of a processing partner. And so the industry has just really changed over the last 10 years, where if you don't have technology and you're not your own processor, you're really being left behind. Right. And so that's really what's happening. So we do all of our own underwriting, all of our own risk. We own our own technology, our own front end, back end. So everything stays in-house this way. You don't have to go anywhere for anything. And so even including like the terminals as an example, those all integrate into our platform.
Yeah.
So even when you guys integrate with us, we do all the communication to the terminal. So there's no reason to really have a standalone terminal anymore, although those are still offered. They're really antiquated. Terminals now connect to technology, which connect to systems, right? Like yours. Yeah. And so we help software facilitate their payments, which is really what we do. And then the interaction, the actual, when you log in and use the system, it's been completely customized for what happens in a chiropractic office. Awesome. So everything from storing cards on file to nicknaming a cards, right? Like in what other business do you need to nickname a card? Well, this really came up because you have an HSA card and you have a patient's other card, or maybe they want to buy products on one card and they want to run their care plan on another card. So we added features like adding multiple cards on file. A lot of systems still don't do that today, let alone nicknaming them or sharing cards across family member accounts. So you can add a card into one family member's account and then share it between the other family
Great,
members.
great for our family practices that are paying monthly for their children. Awesome.
Exactly. Even for that, we have split payments. So you can run a single transaction or a care plan transaction, but have it post to multiple patient ledgers. So you can run a single transaction so the patient knows, okay, I'm going to see $400 a month come out, and then post 150 to mom, 100 to dad, 50 to child one, 50 to child two, right? However, you're splitting that up. And now that's automated. No more do you have to run a single transaction, go reverse that from the patient ledger, and then go manually into all the family members' accounts and manually post that payment. We do all of that automatically once you set it up the first
And
time.
it's really speeding up the capability of practice. So when I practiced, I was using Genesis and I was using Fortis. So I apologize. The benefits of working from home are that you get pets. So you may have seen my cat running around in the background. um, so with Fortis, what other features specific to the chiropractic practices, features, benefits exist that our users, some may not know, and what's in the pipeline too?
Yeah. So as far as features that people love and use today, like editing and recurring was probably one of the biggest things when we came in, and even really just today, and even as a couple of years ago, editing and recurring is a nightmare. Because in most systems, think of like Netflix, right? That is how most technology runs. Your
Yeah,
payment declines, you no longer have service until you update your card, your services do not work.
yeah.
That's not what happens in a chiropractic
Yeah,
office,
you
right?
keep getting treated, but then the charges rack up. Yeah,
Yes. And you're running a family clinic. You don't want to, someone might have a financial hardship, might need to defer a payment. So we created all these cool features. You want to change the card on file? It's one change. You add the card, adjust the drop down for the recurring, that changes the card on file. You want to skip this month's payment. They walk in, they hand you cash. They walk in, it's the first of the new year. Their HSA card just got renewed. And they're like, here, I have $1,000 on my HSA card. Can you swipe this and deduct it from my balance? You can do that.
that's
You can defer payments. So patient says, hey, it was the holidays. I'm kind of behind. Can we skip this month's payment and move it to next month? You can defer the payment. So it'll skip this month and it'll add a month onto the end of the care plan. You can
wonderful.
do that with one click. Um, Anytime a recurring payment declines, we automatically send an e-invoice directly to the patient through
Yeah,
an email. Hey, your payment declined. Click this link. They can make the payment right on their phone. And there's a checkbox at the bottom that says use this card for future recurring payments. We add the card on file, update the recurring, and practice goes on with what they need to
love it.
do.
And that also ties into a Genesis task system. So whoever is assigned to that task, usually front desk or financial officer, that task, boom, fires right in there. So are you able to do financing through Fortis Pay at all? Like things like Care Credit? Is that something you're looking to do?
No, so we don't do that. We are strictly credit card processing, right? So we are growing really within that space. When you get into the fintech space, everything is getting very, very specialized.
Yeah.
And so we are sticking to what we do. We might partner with someone in the future on that, but we would never be, or I won't say never, for the foreseeable future. That is not something that we have in our roadmap.
I've heard something recently: get rich in the niche. So there's no reason to completely diversify when it doesn't make sense for your focus. Um,
Exactly.
that's awesome. I mean, this is a straightforward conversation, right? Because it's like you have a good credit card processing company. We're not. What about like rates and things like that? Are those negotiable? So as
Yeah, yeah. I'll give you one other feature real quick before we move on. So, or I guess maybe two. One would be pay links. So I still see a chiropractor today. So I'm going to see Dr. Tony Nalda, who uses Genesis,
yeah,
right? So I've got a little bit of scoliosis from an injury when I was in my 20s. And so I try to see Dr. Tony Nalda every year. So I'm heading up in 2 months, securing the payment. I got a pay link. So they emailed me or text me a pay link out of the Fortis system for my $250 deposit. I clicked it, paid it. It gave me the receipt right there. I could print it. It also emailed the receipt to me. So offices use that feature in various ways. This is really one good example. I actually I have a friend whose business is out in California. He uses it, and I was just texting with him the other day, and he uses it for the same exact reason, right? So he runs a little bit of a different business, but you can just text links right to your patients. People use this at screenings, right? So you're at a screening. Hey, I don't have my credit card with me. No problem. We'll text you a link, pay that before you come into the office, and then that's how you get your exam x-ray.
I love it. It really handles a lot of difficult conversations and saves a ton of time on the telephone because you can do that way ahead of time. So that also, you can create a link to the website as well. So if someone's shopping online, finds you and says, okay, I want to sign up for a consult, boom, right there. And it can.
Exactly.
Right? Awesome.
Yep. So we're adding that so you can do payments right on your website. It's basically customized, drag and drop, whatever you want to add to your website, add it on. We give you the code. You give that to your developer. They add that right to your website, or it's a page, and you can send that page out. So let's say you're doing a talk or you're doing a special event and you want to create just a custom page, and that page can be a part of like a click funnel that you do. You can create this page, and we have customized approval or decline URL redirects. So basically, after it approves or declines, you get to say what page it goes to next. So we understand the payment world. This is why I say we don't really get out of our lane. We really stay in the payment world because there's so many needs within that we would rather tweak within that and let other specialists deal in that world, like financing, while we continue to customize our system.
And really improve efficiencies. And it's again, just like Genesis does, focuses on the patient experience, making it easier. And you have to these days to compete with every other company that's out there. Cool. What do you got? And that's in the pipeline, or that's already
That's already built. So what's in the pipeline is we're actually launching an inventory management system.
Oh, nice.
So it's going to be a really robust. I say we don't go out of our lane. This is about as far outside of our lane as we go. Payments so closely correlate with inventory. It was the number one request and issue that we kept hearing about, was like inventory management problems. And so we know you guys kind of dabble in it. We're going to kind of dive head deep in it because it's really such a problem that we realize that between taking the payment and then managing this inventory, that we wanted to really tackle the solution. So we're launching an inventory management system. It's fully integrated. We're already talking with your dev team about integrating it in so the payments will actually post to the patient ledger already, but then also the products will too. So you can see the products post to the patient ledger. The payment can post right to the patient ledger. It'll manage all the inventory. You tell you when your inventory is low. We're launching an iOS and Android app for it. So you can actually like scan the barcode of the product right through your phone. And then what's really coming down the pipeline is all of this will be integrated through terminals eventually. So you could have a cool terminal sitting on your desk that's going to do all of this as well. So just a lot of functionality coming down the pipeline with what we're building, just really cool tech. We're really becoming a leader in the space around tech. The last like 3 years, we've won one of the best APIs in payments. And so we're just really leading the charge when it comes to technology. And what's cool is I have a ton of influence in the company around where we focus that tech, and we focus a lot in chiropractic. Last year, we broke $1 billion in chiropractic payments alone.
That's amazing.
And so
like you are a integral piece to the profession being amplified and growing. I'm imagining, as you were telling me about that last feature, like when I go into a store, like a clothing store, they now can check me out through my, through their iPhone with a little swiper on the back. Same with dining, right? It's like nobody has, they hand me their little machine and I'm adding my tip right on there and boom, it's so I can imagine that's what you're referring to, right? Like where it's that. Okay.
What's actually really cool is on the new Apple devices, the device can actually be a terminal. So you can tap your card right on the back of the phone. Wow. So with that new application that we're building, you can use your camera, scan the barcode, check them out. If let's assume you don't have the card on file, because your card on file in Fortis is automatically in the inventory system. But if they don't, you can just turn your phone around. They can tap, or do Apple Pay right on the device, and the device will take the transaction.
That's amazing.
So it's going to work on the phone. It's going to work on these standalone devices. It's going to be really, really cool.
Great. I know that even in the future after that, I'm gonna just put my hand up and it's gonna scan there for me, which I'm myself personally, I'm a little scared of that part, but I love the ease of using the phone and doing it that way. So Fortis Pay is typically at trade shows, right? FCA. What other shows do you guys usually go to?
Yeah, we don't go to as many shows today as we used to. We tend to do work more with like the coaching groups
Okay.
because at the big trade shows, we kind of get lost in the crowd
Yep.
of just the big events. So we work with partners like you where we dive deep with your partners because when you go to those trade shows, you're kind of building for the masses. And while we feel that we can do everything for everyone, we're not trying to be everything for everyone. We're
Yeah.
trying to be everything that Genesis needs us to be.
Yeah.
Right. And so we would rather dive deep with our partners versus going vertically, trying to grab everyone in the industry.
Yep. Mile deep, inch wide instead of inch wide.
Exactly.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah,
So
because if we can solve offices' problems, they're going to stay with us.
yeah,
Right. And our goal, like my dad was in practice for 30 plus years, my grandfather was in practice for 35 plus years. We would rather keep you for the life of your practice, right? We're not trying to come and grab your business for 3 years, feed creep you as it's politely called, and then you leave and go to the next processor. That's not what we want to do, right? So we want to build great technology. We want to do it at a fair price, and we want you to stay with us for the life of being in practice.
awesome. I really appreciate just the depth that you can get into this, the features, the things that you're paying attention to. And it's nice to see a face behind a company, because I'm always thinking like Fortis is this, and it's a big company because you're processing a lot of dollars. And it's nice to meet the CEO. And I've worked with a lot of your team so far in what we have coming up from collaborative events and marketing and things like that. So thank you for your time, your information. And it's nice to have a smiling, intelligent face behind Fortis Pay. Genesis Nation, if you're not using Fortis Pay, pay attention to this podcast. Take a look, and we'll have all the links and everything below to get started. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Thanks, Dr. Brian.